I'm sorry about that slow start. And that will take us to 3 o'clock. And we will kick off our specially called commission meeting of April 13th, 2020, and get our opening report from our city manager, Mr. Delgado, on the COVID-19 status.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, commissioners, for the opportunity this afternoon. I'll give a very quick report, then I'm going to ask Audrey Kane to give us more of the emergency operations report, and then Joel Ivy joined us because of some questions last week to go ahead and just give us a little report on what Lakeland Electric is currently doing in order to make sure the power stays on and people stay safe. Just to give you a little overview, as of last Wednesday, as initiated by our declaration of emergency, our workforce began going ahead and modifying our schedule both internally and externally so that we could maintain the CISA guidelines and the state of Florida Surgeon General suggestions to make sure that our employees and have been reduced our on-site workforce by about 50%. And I can tell you we've been able to go ahead and do that. As you're all aware, government services utilities have mainly been mission critical. Understanding that, we've gone ahead and maintained our mission critical operations throughout the organization, as well as having a tremendous amount of workforce working from home. Matter of fact, we have well over 630 people working from home today, and hopefully I didn't lose you all there. All right, I'm going to continue. I hope you can hear me because I've got something else on my screen. More than 630 people working from home today. We've also taken a look at some of the suggestions that have come from our state of Florida Surgeon General as it relates to those 65 and older who have some pre-existing conditions. We've done everything in our power, understanding and having people who've come to us regarding those two areas and made sure that we've got them also working from home. But I will tell you, there are some mission critical positions that are manned by folks 65 and over. We've made sure that those areas are disinfected and clean, and we are making sure they have some social distancing between them and any of the other workforce. I want to thank specifically our collective bargaining groups, the UWA, who represents electric and water utilities, the police and fire for working with us so closely in order for us to go ahead and manage this major change in our operations, and they are working hand in hand with us. I know Joel had a chance to talk to the UWA. I've obviously had a chance to talk to them as well as police and fire, so I want to thank them. As far as our operational plan is concerned, as you will see, there are people still working in office spaces, but a lot of them are rotating and we're shifting, and we have a number of groups shifting in and out in order to facilitate our needs. But once again, a large majority of our staff is working from home. And as a matter of fact, in our IT department, everyone is working from home because they get to go ahead and use this wonderful technology to be able to do that. With that being said, and the fact that the safer at home orders have significantly reduced the automobile and pedestrian traffic throughout the city, it's allowed us to accelerate some projects that would have significantly impacted the roadways and pedestrian corridors on any other given time period. Staff, of course, is administering these using best safer distance practices as we try to manage and expedite these projects. Two in particular that I want to talk about is we're working right now on milling and resurfacing portions of Lake Hollingsworth multi-use path beginning this Friday. The path is currently closed, as you all know, due to the social distancing impacts. Those traveling around Lake Hollingsworth Drive should expect some minor delays during this work. The work is only expected to take us 4 days to complete as long as the weather is permitting, and I've heard there might be some rain in the forecast coming into the end of the week and this weekend. The budget for these is funded through our gas tax money, so if anybody out there is concerned about how this is being managed, it's being managed through our gas tax monies, which must be spent on roads, sidewalks, and multi-use paths. But the ability to go ahead and get this done in 4 days is very helpful to us and very helpful to the community. So once we're out of this challenge, people will have a nice new path to go ahead and walk around Lake Hollingsworth with. We're also doing a series of existing sewer manholes in the downtown area that are no longer serviceable for maintenance and rehab. So they'll be replacing starting April 20th. So they'll be starting next week. City crews will begin the manhole replacement on Massachusetts Avenue adjacent to City Hall on April 20th. At this location, traffic will be rerouted around the work zone to one lane of travel, which will be open in each direction. Crews anticipate work beginning on April 27th for the second manhole replacement located at South Kentucky between East Main and Lemon Street. The third manhole replacement is slated for April 29th, and that will be at Tennessee Avenue between East Main and Lemon Street. The work duration is expected to approximately be 2 days per manhole. So this once again gives us an opportunity to work in the downtown corridor when there's less vehicular traffic and be able to get those expedited in a way that we wouldn't have had the ability to do so at any other given time. The Kentucky and Tennessee Avenue manhole closures require the road to be closed to vehicular traffic adjacent to those work areas. So I want people who are traversing downtown to understand that. However, pedestrian traffic on the sidewalks will not be impacted in any of these work areas. And obviously we'll be putting traffic signage controls out at the locations so that people know we are in a construction phase. As you probably are already aware, and I don't know if you've received any phone calls, but our solid waste division has made some changes to yard waste services. Those became effective on April 6th. The divisions use a great deal of temporary staff in the rear loader trucks as part of the collection service for alleyways, junk routes, and yard waste. Those yard waste routes will be reduced to once per week to one every other week. So currently do once per week, and we reduced those to once every other week. Unfortunately, with a lot of people being off, they're doing a lot of yard work right now, and I'm seeing it around town. So we're trying to pick it up as much as possible when we drive by. However, I hope people understand that we're trying to remain some social distances even within our cabs and with our workforce. So we want to reduce that to every other week. Customers in the Monday and Tuesday service areas will be collected on the first and third weeks of the month, and the Thursday and Friday customers will be collected the second and fourth weeks of the month. The new collection cycle will start in the northwest area of the city on the weeks 1 and 3, with the crews working north to south. And then trucks will then start in the northeast area of the city in weeks 2 and 4, with crews once again working north to south. There will be no changes, however, to the residential garbage and recycling collection. The alley district garbage, recycling, and yard waste due to limited alley space will also have no changes. Commercial garbage and recycling collection will be maintained, and then the roll-off compactor for construction and demo projects will continue to be collected. Joe will talk a little bit about Lakeland Electric as we move forward and some of the things we're doing. As you know, we place signage at all of these around the city, as well as all of our parks and recreation facilities and trails. If for some reason the governor extends this through May, or if it's necessary that the city commission requires the closures to extend through May, we'll make sure that all that signage is changed prior to that happening. As you're aware, many of our city departments have already established online services and in-person appointments, and they're available in advance for some of those business functions, both in Lakeland Electric and community and economic development. And lastly, as you probably received from me Thursday and Friday, perhaps, we have been starting to get some requests from some of the restaurants and businesses that currently rent from us specifically, that have leaseholds with the city. Many of them are going through some of the same things that people are impacted throughout the city and in the state. They've asked for some rental relief. I provided you some information on what city staff has been looking at. I would like to, at the end of the presentations, to go back to this so we can get some comment from commission and discuss what your opinion is on trying to establish some deferment of rent for these city-owned properties that are currently leased out to non-essential businesses or businesses that have been considered essential but significantly impacted not just by the closures, but also by some of the things that we did. If you take into account that we've closed Cleveland Heights Golf Course, which impacted 1916 Grill. We've closed the area around Lake Mirror, which has impacted the Garden Bistro. And then we have some other areas like Black and Brew. Once we closed the library, that was also significantly impacted. And so they're looking for some assistance. And so I would ask that we circle back around if we can after Audrey and Joel's report to go ahead and talk about that if you feel that's okay with you all. And so with that, I'll wait until we get back to that. I'm going to pass it on to Audrey. Audrey, I don't know if you're on the line.
I'm here. Can you hear me?
We can, Audrey. Go ahead. Yes.
Okay, perfect. Perfect. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Let's see. And do a small presentation for you with some information from the last last week. So again, I just want to thank all of you for letting me give this presentation and update. So let's go. First of all, we have our local numbers. Why is it not playing? I'm sorry.
Audrey, if you could make it, start yeah, you got it. Perfect.
There we go. Yeah. So currently in our surrounding counties, the positive cases of COVID-19 for Hillsborough County is at 790. Manatee County is at 250. Osceola County is at 333. Orange County is currently at 1,017. Sumter County is at 111. And Pasco County is at 166, with Polk County being at 263. Just 2 weeks ago, when I gave this report, a majority of the surrounding counties were at either 50 cases or less, except for Orange and Hillsborough County. So as you can see, the numbers are going up. When it comes to our PPE resources, the city warehouse is keeping a close eye on the PPE, cleaning supplies, and health supplies such as hand sanitizer and soap for the employees. And all departments are currently now coordinating their need for PPE gear through emergency management to allow for accurate documentation of those requests for future reimbursement through public assistance. And we've actually been getting those orders out to all the departments, and I believe all but 1 or 2 orders have been fulfilled, and everyone has the required gear that they need to do their job that are essential. Currently in Region 4, there are stay-in orders and obviously safer at home orders. The state coming down for until April 30th. Hillsborough County over the weekend actually extended their stay-at-home order to match the state's date of April 30th. And all of the rest of the surrounding Region 4 counties are at the April 30th date. The most recent executive order was Executive Order 20-103, extending Executive Order 20-87, which prohibited vacation rentals from taking or making new reservations or bookings, as well as not allowing them to accept any new guests for checking in during that order. The new executive order extends that date until April 30th. There are currently weekly calls to discuss disaster feeding plans for the community regarding mass feeding and hydration services, which are needed for the general population. And the last Friday, I received a list of the United Way of Central Florida and United Community Relief Fund Project list of where they're going to
Audrey, you lost all audio.
Kevin, it appears that her signal is a little light and she's freezing up.
Yes. Audrey, can you hear us? Somebody may need to call her.
Mr. Mayor, if you don't mind, we can try to reconnect with Audrey, and we can pass it on to Joel if that saves some time for you.
I think that's the right thing to do. And when she comes back on live, she can just either through a phone call, which we can do audio wise, or if she can bring her screen back up, just wave at us. Joel, why don't you go ahead, sir?
Very good. Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. Just running through some of the things that we've been doing already. Our call center and revenue management employees and customer service, they're working approximately 50-50 shifts. They're rotating once a week. And then just pretty much all the others in customer service have been working remotely for a couple of weeks now, and that seems to be working okay. Delivery, we have stopped routine maintenance as of last week, and then some new that's what I'd call non-mission critical new construction. We've stopped that as well, and then we'll just have to get that as we can. If there's any new customer connections coming on, if there's a building going up and there's a customer in line for that building, we will connect that building, no questions. Our linemen are on a 25% on and 75% off once a week. Our substation personnel is 50-50. There's not as many of them. So, and then we're trying to keep the supervision as minimal as we possibly can. Our system control center, which is one of our more critical facilities, we're down to 2 certified system operators per 12-hour shift. Usually we have at least one person that's in training. Maybe we have an extra person on a training shift or a standby shift or something, but now we're down to 2. And then we have 1 chief system operator per day. Our Unit 3, though, in production, our Unit 3 is still in outage, and it will be until April 20th. And so we're all hands on deck, and not much we can do about that. To the credit of our warehouse, we were able to secure some KN95 masks for those folks out there, and then we've had a few for our linemen and some other folks, because we're waiting on getting some fire-resistant cloth type face masks for those other guys. But the ones at Unit 3 they're very much on top of each other, and we're trying to keep them as healthy as we can. So April 20th is the target for getting the coal generator back online, and hopefully we can meet that deadline, give or take a few days. It's been down for a good time. A lot of the rest of our people are able to work from home, and so we've got well over 70 people that have been working from home for a while, and then a few people that have to show up to the office for one thing or another, like mailroom duties. So I spoke with the American Public Power Association just this morning with Cindy Clemens and a gentleman from JEA, Jacksonville. APPA, that document that Commissioner Madden sent out, APPA was instrumental in helping get that put together. And they focused very heavily on power plant operations and system control centers, both of which we had. And they're really saying that there's a heavy push towards doing a sequestration of these employees. And I just want to say, I'm not behind doing something like that for several reasons. But most importantly, our system control center it's not of the critical nature that New York Power Authority is, or Florida Power and Light, or somebody like that. There are functions that we do here that are critically important, but we don't have all the other duties that some of these larger agencies have. And we also, our backup control center is located kind of out towards the police training center. And so we can always fall back on that if we needed to. If our control center became contaminated, we could fall back on that and get that decontaminated quickly enough to get back to business as usual. So I'm not really for that. In our plant operations, that was another big one that utilities are trying to use as sequestration. In our plant operations, we've got Unit 5 control centers in one location, Unit 3 is in another. And so if we ran into a contamination issue out there, we could actually shut a generator down if we had to, take a day, get it decontaminated, get it back up online and get going again. So I don't really think that we're in the same situation as everybody else across the country. And quite honestly, we're not set up for sequestration. It's a very uncomfortable deal for our folks. And to have somebody come in for a week at a time, I just don't see that as a good idea. And there's a lot of utilities across the country that are like-minded with that. But some of the larger ones, if you can imagine some of the commute times, if you work for New York Power Authority or even Orlando Utilities or Jacksonville, any of those folks that are bigger and more critical than we are, they can have some pretty lengthy travel times. So I can see why some of those might want to do it, but certainly not every utility that has a control center would need to do that. From a testing standpoint, I know y'all talked about that last week, and I appreciate it. I appreciate Commissioner Madden stepping forward and taking the lead on that, because that is important to us. Our ability to have business continuity depends on our folks being able to show up for work. And so a week ago this past Sunday, or I should say yesterday, we had a rainstorm move through. It was actually no big deal. There wasn't any violent wind or anything like that with it, but we had people working pretty much all day and into the night on Sunday. Well, those people go on rest time the next day. And I want to bring this up because we are in thunderstorm season. We also happen to be in a drought, but we're in thunderstorm season. So this could be a couple of days a week where we have something like that going on. If we had an outbreak with our line workers, we could be shorthanded in just a couple of days' time. if we had to send people home for like to get tested and then wait 5 days to get the results back. So I've got a lot of people that fall into the category of needing that testing, that priority testing, but I don't anticipate we would ever send more than just a handful at a time, if that. Usually it's just going to be one or two. So I've been working with the city manager, Mr. Delgado, and he's been working with the hospital and trying to make some things happen for us there. And I'm pretty comfortable that we're in a good spot right now. And so, hopefully we won't ever have to use it, which is our goal. But if we do, I think we're going to be in a good spot. Mr. Mayor, that's all I got.
Well, it's an excellent report. I think it's wonderful, the 25% lineman on and 75% off. That's a good safety net in and of itself.
Absolutely. And everybody that's off understands very well that they're on call. And they're subject to call that at any point in time. So they stand ready. To Tony's point, we met with the union folks and they said to a person, we're here to have, make sure our customers are taken care of and you guys just let us know what you need. So it was a good conversation.
Any comments or questions from commissioners? I don't see any. Okay. Mr. Delgado, anything else you want to add to that? If you're on mute.
I forget I got to keep hitting that mic. I apologize. I was hoping Audrey would be able to come, get back on because she has some additional information on some of the positive things we're working on. Want to thank Commissioner Franklin and all he did the other day. Was able to get some additional PPEs from a client of Lanier Upshaw, not just to us, but also to the hospital and to our friends over in Hillsborough County. So Commissioner Franklin, thank you very much. That's one of the things we heard in today's call with the EOC. PPEs are at a premium right now. And because so many folks and so many operations need them, it's just not first responders. It's just not the hospital. It's just not those folks and police and fire, but it's a number of other folks who are in need. So I want to reach out to the community, all those folks who are manufacturing PPEs, thank you. All the folks that are donating them, thank you. But if you've got other lines out there and other opportunities for us to work closely with you, we are very, very interested in that. I see Kevin's hands up, so I'm wondering if Audrey's back.
Okay. Yeah.
Yes, Audrey's ready. So just whenever you're ready to introduce her, sir.
Okay,
all right, go ahead.
Mr. Mayor, I'll let Audrey finish and then we can talk.
Okay,
Right,
can
Audrey.
you guys hear me now?
Yes, we can perfectly.
Wonderful. So I'm going to go back to, I actually asked Kevin Cook which slide I was on. I believe I was on this one when I lost connection.
Yes, ma'am. You were talking
So-
about the executive order.
Okay, so the current executive order that was just brought out actually extended executive order 20-87. This executive order actually prohibited vacation rentals from taking or making new reservations or bookings, as well as not allowing them to accept new guests for check-in during that time. And the new executive order extends the date until April 30th.
Got it.
So during our recovery planning, I've been weekly calls with community partners and the emergency management with Polk County as well regarding feeding and a list of the food pods. That's a point of distribution in conjunction with United Way of Central Florida and United Community Relief Fund Project. Starting this week, we will have several areas where the community can come and pick up some food. At Fort Meade, they will be able to pick that up starting every second and fourth Thursday. Haines City will be Trinity Worship Center International Ministries, and that is every second and fourth Wednesday at 2 p.m. In Lakeland, it'll be at the Lakeland Volunteers in Medicine on Peachtree Street every second and last Tuesday at noon. Also in Lakeland, they'll have Blessings and Hope, and that will be set for every second and fourth Tuesday. Winter Haven will be at the Way Church on every second and fourth Saturday. Frostproof will be at the Frostproof Care Center, and that is every first and third Wednesday. Lake Wales and Iglesias Day Pentecostal Ministries will be every first and third Thursday. Also, again, in Lakeland, we'll be at Crystal Lake Elementary every first and third Wednesday. And then in Mulberry, at the Mulberry Migrant Camp, that will be every second and fourth Wednesday. And they're setting up some areas in Bartow and Auburndale as well. What our hopes is that, staggering these dates will allow them to have an area around the county for the community to come and pick up some of that food. And they are adding some more locations as we go along, as well as increasing the ability to reach into mental health care. So they have a list of facilities and doing telehealth for mental health for the community. So they can call 211 to get that list or some numbers to be able to call, as well as calling their current physician to get some help from them that way. This past week, we also talked about non-congregate sheltering for our vulnerable population, coordinating with the Polk County Health and Human Services and the Homeless Coalition. We are looking at doing non-congregate sheltering for homeless, those that are elderly, that have no care, are living by themselves, anyone that's in the vulnerable population that would be either exposed or need to be isolated for quarantine for a possible positive case of COVID. And we are currently working on those plannings right now. We're working with our community development department here with the city, as well as Polk County Emergency Management, so we can put together a package and have it presented to the state, to FEMA for approval. As well as doing non-congregate sheltering for any of our first responders that would need, or if they were exposed to a positive case while they were helping them, to not be able to go home and possibly expose their family members. So that will also be in the approval as well. As you can see on this new graphs we have here, that was today from the 11 o'clock update. In Polk County, the age distribution is still within the 45 to 64 range at the most. And the state of Florida is actually seeing a very large increase in the ages of 45 to 54 of positive cases. So again, we just want to remind everybody that this, disease is not age discriminatory. So please make sure that you are self-isolating, washing your hands, and taking care of each other. And for our last, I just wanted to report to the commission and mayor that currently both our departments of fire and police are reporting 0 first responders, either on quarantine or isolation. And about a week or 2 weeks ago, we actually had 11 of them. So I just wanted to report some great news to let you know that we have 0 first responders on either on quarantine or isolation. And that is all I have for you this week. Any questions?
Questions from commissioners? And unmute yourself, because with the presentation up, I cannot see you all at the same time, so I apologize. Commissioner Walker.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Ms. Kane, the location you mentioned for feeding here in Lakeland, one of the locations, was that Blessed Hope? Because I thought you said Blessed and Hope. I want to make sure I heard it correct. There's a Blessed Hope ministry right there near the Housing Authority in the Southwest District of our city. Was that Blessed Hope? Am I correct by hearing that?
Blessings and Hope.
Blessings and where's that located?
It's at 2150 East Edgewood Drive. And I'll be giving these locations to Kevin's team to post on our website as well, and as on the social media.
All right, thank you, ma'am.
You're welcome.
Good clarification, Commissioner Walker. Anyone else? Commissioner Madden. You're on.
Thank you so much, Audrey, for that presentation. I had three three quick questions. So the first one, since we had Joel speak to, kind of solving that problem of critical infrastructure and utility workers having prioritization and testing, and you're the one, that holds the master pandemic response. I thought if you could speak to including that or building that into our pandemic response for future pandemics, which we hope will be another 100 years away, but just the importance of having that electric utility critical infrastructure workers having testing prioritization in a pandemic. So that's kind of just a note that you're the one that I know holds the pandemic emergency response plan. If that could somehow be built into there, whatever you are finding as a best practice that the city manager and Joel, and I know you're working on that as well, just to make sure that that's noted and included. Two other things. One is this morning on the county call, they mentioned that it was important in order to have any kind of reimbursement that you had to make a request, a formal request. They did not mention the city of Lakeland had made such a request. Have we?
Yes, Asha and her team and finance have already made that request, I believe, 2 weeks ago.
Okay, perfect. They just didn't name City of Lakeland, so I wanted to clarify. And then the third thing, could you remind us what exactly the rules are with regard to masks? I know I have a lot of concerned citizens. They don't know if they're going to get in trouble if they don't have a mask, when they're supposed to wear a mask, where they could get a mask. They don't have, they see on the news how hard it is to get masks to our first responders. They wonder how they're supposed to find a mask or get the right mask. And so I've been saying, I think it's okay to wear a bandana if you don't have a mask. But if you could just speak to the exact rules, like if you're walking down your street, it sounds like you can do 6 feet, so you don't need a mask. But if you're in a public place where you feel like you can't socially distance, then you need a mask. Just if you could give some clarification, and then maybe where a citizen could get a mask, or what would constitute a mask.
Yes. So a mask for them, if they're out and about in the public, if they can do social distancing, they still are requiring those to wear a mask. But if you're just walking around your neighborhood, you should be fine without the mask. But if you're going to a store, going to a gas station, or anywhere that you could possibly come into contact with someone, you should be wearing a mask. Those masks could be from a paper procedural mask to a bandana to a homemade sewn cloth mask. They do not need to wear the surgical or the N95s. Finding those masks are difficult at this time if you're a citizen. I do know that CVS, Walgreens, they are holding some masks behind the pharmacy in boxes. They can ask for those if they have any. You can make one, or just go to like the general dollar store, or even the family store, General Family, Kmart, Walmart. Buy yourself a bandana and tie yourself a cloth mask, so that way you keep your nose and your mouth covered.
And I would just ask maybe our city manager or the mayor, I wonder if, our local Publix or stores that people frequent, now that it is something that's more mandated by executive order, just like they are able to clean those carts when you first enter a store, if there'd be a way to, have those for sale, at the entrance of some of our, essential, what do you think? What do my colleagues think about that? Like, is there any way we could advocate that our Publix or the places that are still open could have those? So if someone doesn't feel comfortable that they have one, that they would know that they could purchase those when they got there?
If I may,
Sure.
If I may, Mr. Mayor, thank you. Obviously the big key, and as Audrey put it, was trying to locate quantities of that. And so obviously we can talk to our local grocery stores, those type of things, and see if they even have the ability to go ahead and receive those for sale. There's a couple medical supply places in Lakeland. I've been very lucky to hit it at the right time. So there's a couple medical supplies like in Lakeland that get a constant supply every couple times a week there. Someplace people might want to think of, but based upon the executive orders that I've seen coming out of cities such as Cutler Bay, down in the southeast, Even yesterday, as Osceola just put one into effect here today, I believe, starting at 12:01 a.m. They're telling people that if you're not going to be in an area that you believe you're going to have contact with other individuals, you don't really need to have a mask. However, if you're going to the grocery store, you're going to go to areas that you think you're going to have contact, even a bandana is a good thing to wear, or a scarf. Those of you who fish sometimes have those fishing masks. Those are also good. So I would tell anybody that they think they're going to spend some time in areas that there are going to be other people, even a bandana or a scarf, even these executive orders point that out. If you can't find a mask, you can find something in your house as long as it's clean. I put it through the wash. That's what I did with my masks, the cloth ones that somebody made for me. I put them through the wash and then go ahead and put those on. I think for today, that makes good sense. Audrey, am I off base in saying that?
No, you're absolutely correct. And I also want everyone to know that when you're in your own vehicle, you don't need to wear a mask until you step out of your vehicle going into a store. So you do not need to wear a mask if you're in your own vehicle. But you are correct, Tony.
Commissioner Walker.
If you don't recall, last week I mentioned to you all there is an organization here in our city. They're making masks and still doing it. I didn't know whether or not you all saw that being important at the time, but it's the Washington Park Rochelle alumni. And so far, they have sent over 100 masks up to New York. They have also given out over 150 plus in our local area. They're about to send another 100 to Mayo Clinic in Jacksonville. So for those that may be listening, or you all want to notate this again, as I mentioned last week, Washington Park Rochelle alumni are making masks, and I've gotten a couple of, I kind of shared one with you all last week as we spoke, and you can contact the president of the organization, Ms. Boatwright, Beverly Boatwright, 863 area code 640-5494. Again, 863 area code 640-5494, and they're still making masks and getting them out to people for those that may wish to have one.
And I think that probably would suffice for most people to be able, if they want to have a mask, they can probably get to one. Going back to your question, Commissioner Madden, I think if a store wants to make those available, that's probably a good idea that they could sell them. It's a piece of retail item that they could have available. Mandating that they wear them has not been done by the governor. You know, it's been suggested, and there's a difference in those two things.
Mm-hmm.
Commissioner McLeod.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I would think, Tony, Kevin, there's an opportunity to do some messaging on mask and different sources, and just to work that into our content over the next week or so. As there are questions here, we're getting questions about when should you wear a mask, when should you not. So just something to keep in mind. I think that would be timely and appropriate.
Good word.
Thank you, Commissioner. We'll make sure we do that, and we'll probably use Audrey as our spokesperson in doing that too.
You had a good suggestion, by the way, Commissioner McLeod, at the county meeting this morning in terms of the clarity of that message. If you're going to make it work well and to have a good message for it. And I thought that was wise.
Thank you. That was an interesting discussion, and we'll be curious to see where that goes. I know it is challenging when you've got county-wide officials, and now we have healthcare providers in on that as well. But yeah, it was interesting to hear everybody's feedback on that. So be curious to see where that lands for sure.
Any other questions by commissioners? All right, Audrey, thank you very much for your continuing work. You're not done by any means. Welcome aboard again. But we really appreciate what you're getting done. And City Manager Delgado.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, if I may, before we go to the commissioners having the opportunity to speak individually, I'd like to circle back around to the requests that we had been receiving. If you don't mind, I'll go ahead and provide some additional information based upon what I sent last week. As I said before, we've had some of our leaseholds request some assistance during this challenging period, and obviously those are primarily restaurants, public assembly facilities, a dance studio, some of those that currently use our space and lease from us. With that, I provided some information based upon a collaboration between a number of departments from finance to community development, CRA, and others, including Parks and Rec, who work with these folks on a daily basis, and what they would like the commission to consider. Now, mind you, this is strictly a suggestion. If the commission feels that we should go another way, we're obviously open to doing whatever the commission opines on. But they would consider a 90-day rent deferment for those tenants managing restaurants, food establishments, or social gathering accommodations that are specifically identified as essential in the governor's executive order. This would not provide those businesses of operations that are not within these specific categories or have been identified as essential operation within that executive order. A rent deferment of 90 days. That deferment would be recouped by the city or the CRA by incorporating a gradual repayment of the 90-day adjustment into the remaining month's rent within the current lease term through fiscal year 2021 in June. So we would take June 20 through fiscal year and June 2021 to go ahead and try to gradually recoup some of that deferment. This provides those businesses affected to have 1 calendar year of adjusted monthly rental payments. Staff recommends against waiving taxes, insurance, or utilities, and common area maintenance, as some of those components are primarily a cost passed through the tenants, and the city would be required to make those payments if waived. Additionally, staff recommends that each circumstance be reviewed on a case-by-case basis, and we would provide those to the commission. Again, there are specific business sectors that are not mandated for closure or modification and are capable of operating at full capacity, so we don't see a reason why we would extend this to them. There are a number of businesses to be considered, and I'll just go through them very quickly. And some have already come to us. Those being Black and Brew at the Library Coffee House, the Garden Bistro, which is located on Lake Mirror Promenade, the 1916 Bar and Grill, which is located at Cleveland Heights Golf Course, which is currently closed, Yard on Mass, Artifacts, House 820, which is a social gathering place, the Neighbors of Lakeland, which you're familiar is over by Yard on by Mass Market, the Duo Bakehouse, and then finally the Crystal's World of Dance. So with that, we are asking for the commission to take a look at that, provide us any suggestions or recommendations, let us know if this is something you have an appetite to do. The total impact of a 3-month deferment for all these leaseholds comes to roughly $33,000. That's 3 months total. That's what that deferment comes to. So with that, Mr. Mayor, I would ask that the commission have a chance to opine on that and provide us any recommendation that they would like.
All right, so I think the request was laid out well and very, very clear. Are there any initial thoughts? And I'll be happy to share one after you've gone. Commissioner Walker. I'm sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I did, I guess we all have, because as our city manager had asked us to do, to make sure we get back to him one-on-one and share our particular thoughts based on the recommendation coming from he and the staff. I am in total agreement with, providing some support as best we can to those businesses. We're seeing that's happening all over our country where, different ones have been affected as they are, and what can be done to help support them until they're back to business again, of course. Even I'm finding with, being a very, I call a landlord that's have only just a few rental properties, having to support my tenants, to make sure they have a place to stay. And because of jobs and situations and such, where hours being cut or no job at all, with some situations on a personal level, but I know others are doing the same thing. So I would agree that we should do something, and I have no problem with what has been suggested by staff to help support those particular businesses at best.
Thank you, Mr. Walker. Commissioner Franklin.
Yeah, Mayor, I support that initiative. I think it'd be a good statement for them, give those businesses peace of mind. Those are properties that we want to have filled. We don't want vacancies coming out of the back end of this. And as long as it's a deferment and not a pass, I would support it.
Let me ask you a question, Commissioner Franklin. And you mentioned a pass. This for 90 days, I look at those businesses, and in almost every case, they can't do anything for 90 days. So we can defer and they can move it up. But they also occupy properties that we have helped to stimulate on a CRA basis. There's no question. In many cases, we've already done that work. Is it too much to think about just giving them a 90-day pass for that $33,000 in aggregate? I think that was your number. As part of the goodwill appreciation of our fact that they occupy those spaces, and we're trying to give them a little bit of a boost as they come back up to speed. That's kind of the frame with which I'd like to think about in terms of the extremes in this, perhaps. But because there's nothing they can do to recoup, they just get going again. So I think we could go to the deferment recommendation. Clearly, I would support at least that deferment level. I'm just asking maybe for a little discussion on, could we give them a pass altogether? Or half of a pass or something. Thoughts?
Well, my only hesitation there is I'm just not sure where that would lead. And I know these are tenants of city properties, but I think in businesses all across our community, we've got landlords who are trying to work with their tenants. And I just think it's kind of, my first thought is it's maybe a dangerous slope to start down of waiving, because I just don't know where that would lead. We could probably sit here within an hour and have 1,000 different requests for things that are, genuinely heartfelt and worthy of consideration. I don't know that I'd want to start there with a complete waiver of the rent. That's just my first point.
Very good. Commissioner Walker.
I guess, are you asking us all, because I know you pointed to him specifically, are you asking us all to chime in now?
Sure. Yes, sir.
I would have to agree with what Commissioner Franklin said. And as I said initially myself, I'm in agreement with the deferment and do what we can best to help support those businesses as they, as many of us are struggling, not many of us, but those who may be struggling, and trying to get themselves, of course, through the situation. And I'm in agreement with the deferment myself.
Commissioner Reed. Commissioner Reed.
Thank you, Mayor. I had to get my unmuted. There again, I concur. I hate to compete with the private sector per se, and a lot of the people that we're renting to are paying subpar rent anyway, in my opinion. And so there again, I'm for the deferment, but not for the forgiveness.
All right, then is there a motion from anyone with respect to this recommendation? Commissioner McCarley.
I move to go with the initial proposal to do the 3-month deferment.
Is there a second? There's a second from Commissioner McLeod. And discussion from commissioners. Yes, Commissioner McCarley.
I just concur with everything that's already been said. I think that 3 months is gracious, and we want them to jump back in when business starts back up. And this might be something we have to talk about further down the road, but if we can support them now with this, I think that's a good olive branch in this time of crisis.
Excellent. Any other commissioner comments? Are there any comments from the public available, Mr. Cook?
We have no phone-ins at this time.
Okay, so all those in favor of providing this 90-day rent deferment, signify by raising your hand. Opposed, same. Unanimously passes. Thank you for that recommendation, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and I'll get with staff. They'll start working with their clients. What's ultimately going to happen, and I'm sure Palmer's on the line, we're probably going to have to do some addendums to some leases, and we'll bring them forward to you, but we'll at least let our clients know that this is a route that the commission has acted on, and if they accept it, we'll move forward with each one of those clients I noted.
Excellent. And thank you all for having a discussion on it overall. I appreciate that. Wasn't trying to create a wild scenario, but I am glad that we had the discussion. There are no audience members that have been pre-registered for this meeting. So that takes us to our opportunity to talk about anything that the mayor, that you as commissioners or myself would like to bring up. Any items? Commissioner McCarley.
I actually had a couple of follow-up questions to Tony. One is on those manhole covers. Are we doing that during the day? Does that save us a little bit of money doing it during the day rather than doing it at night?
Yes,
as
we're
far
doing
as-
it during the, we're
Okay.
doing it during the day. And yes, it does save us money and we can use less staff.
Good. A second question. I want to follow up on our strategic planning meeting. I'm curious if anybody would be interested in talking about doing that sooner rather than later, back to our original dates, maybe, since I have this feeling that once things start opening back up, we're going to be really busy bees around here. And if that's mid-May when we pushed it off to, I'm wondering if we should take the time and allow it for earlier rather than later.
City Manager Delgado.
Thank you. Commissioner McCarley, I certainly appreciate your thoughts on that. We've been working with Craig. We've been keying in on those May dates now and trying to get speakers lined up and those type of things. And as you know, the earlier dates are next week, and I'm not sure we can get all our speakers lined up. However, if the commission is available, maybe we can push it up a little bit. And I'll talk to my staff today after this meeting and see if we can push that up a little bit.
I think you have most of our calendars so that you could see if that works. I don't think, however, then in May, I think we're being optimistic in mid-May that people will be back to normal, because I think we have a longer road than that, though, too. Commissioner McCarley, go ahead.
I completely agree about that. I'm just thinking that if we could, I don't know if we talked about it doing it digitally, but if we could have some consideration to make it a little bit sooner, I think this is a good time that we're all kind of idle. And if we could put our forethought into long range planning and the strategic thinking that we're going to need to be really nimble for recovery, I think it might be a good time. I just don't want to wait too long to where we're all on our heels again and being reactionary to whatever the world looks like. So that's just my suggestion. I appreciate the opportunity to share that. I had a couple of other things as well. I just wanted to highlight, I reached out to Chuck Barmby this week and wanted to note for the public that the city of Lakeland has 266 miles of sidewalks that are open and available for running, biking, walking, getting out into your neighborhoods and around the community. And I would highly encourage that, as well as many local gyms, yoga studios, Balance Culture, different groups have online resources available, both free and that you can sign up for, since we've talked a lot historically about exercise and getting out and being well. Also, if you're in an apartment complex, you have stairs and other ways to get out and about. So I just wanted to sort of on a positive note, share with communication staff, maybe there's some wellness opportunities here that we can push out in the city of Lakeland of sharing places where people can continue to walk, run, I'm not a jogger or a runner unless someone has a lion, and then I might run. But other people might enjoy that, and I walk in the neighborhood with the dog. So I just thought I would mention that.
Mr. Cook.
Actually, City Manager Delgado had his hand up before I did.
Yeah, I want to thank Commissioner McCarley. We had a good conversation on Friday. I reached out to Mr. Cook. We're going to try to go ahead and get something out there, at least to publicize the fact that we do have 266 miles of sidewalks within our community. And there are a number of other options for folks. The state mandate, the order says you could still walk and bike on the street. I only ask that people be safe and secure when they do that, but you can do that. And so we're not prohibiting that at all. But Commissioner McCarley, thank you for our conversation on Friday. I did get with Mr. Cook and we're going to try to put something out.
And I think that's a good word, Mr. Cook.
Yes, thank you, City Manager Delgado, as well as Mr. Mayor and the illustrious City Commission on this remote, especially called meeting. Yes, well, we have a lot of social media out there that we're doing, especially with some of the alternatives for exercising. I don't know if you saw the one that we recently put out with Liz on a number of opportunities that the library has. The library from their digital media, and if you live in Polk County, you can use it. They have a number of exercise videos, a number of personal trainers on video that can assist you. So Liz did a workout in the morning, and we time lapsed it, so it went by real quickly, and we're sharing some of those opportunities. We also have a really cool piece that we're working on right now regarding the sidewalks. So look for that possibly ready to go tomorrow.
I had an interesting conversation with a parent about teaching their younger kids how to ride bikes on streets, because to a large degree, that's just not been done. And how you sandwich, I could go back to when I raised children, and you could sandwich the kids between the two of you and make sure that you're doing a good job of teaching them and looking over their shoulder before they do a cross street so they see traffic coming, and those kinds of tips. And I do think it's a time to teach some of those things. If the kids are old enough, let's use it and do that. But I thank you so much for making that recommendation. I'd also like to go back to your comment on strategic planning. I would always prefer to be in a room together for a meeting, but I do believe we could do a strategic planning meeting virtually. I think we could do this. I think we're getting it, and we have enough Zooms going on now that we're learning how to watch people and watch the faces and integrate the topic. So even to the extent, and I'm sure because of Craig Collins' facilitation skills and his desire to see all the faces present, this would not be his preference, but I think it could be done if we were trying to expedite time. City Manager Delgado.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor and Commissioner McCarley for bringing that up. We have been in conversations with Craig. We're still talking about whatever date we come with, and obviously we're looking at the May dates now. We'll try to see how we can facilitate that. We have talked about still using the RP Funding Center and doing it in a way that social distancing can be utilized. Possibly just the commission and Craig and myself and Mike Brosart in one very big room, probably 40 feet away from each other, and then being able to do everybody else virtually. That's what we're looking at now. We're trying to work those details out. We think we're able to go ahead and do that. Obviously with the speakers, and we don't have as many speakers because it's really on some of the issues that you brought up during your one-on-one conversations with Dr. Collins. Some of those speakers can be doing exactly what we're doing and have Q&A regarding that. So we're still looking at doing a hybrid, but one where we would use a big room and be separated. Because you're right, Dr. Collins
that's
does want
probably
to
better.
see your faces.
There's no question. Yes. All right. Any other comments by commissioners? Commissioner Walker.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think you all probably have heard some news or had in the media where there were conversations about the COVID-19 situation, especially among people of color and situations such as that. I was part of a call this past Friday morning, the 10th, for the White House, had a conference call for African American leadership regarding this that particular subject matter. With all the media that went out about, special pockets of our country where you had larger segments of African American people and the COVID-19 situation. Very good conversation. Very good, I think, call on this past Friday morning, the 10th. Want to make sure you are aware that out of all of it, the important thing is, making sure the word is getting out to people. And I'm saying this because I just yesterday, in a couple of pockets in our core African-American inner city area, I saw quite a bit of gathering. And as a result, and I again want to say, because I think, folks are just not making sure they understand the importance of why you should not gather as you should at this particular point of what we're dealing with. And as a result, of course, you had police that had to be called out to help, support, dispersing, in a situation as it was on yesterday here in our city. And I want to make sure that, people who may be listening, or you all aware as my colleagues, that I want to thank the police department for what they did to help support, the gathering of large crowds being dispersed and making sure they understand the importance. Because even in that conversation that we had on Friday morning with the White House staff, senior staffers about, the African-American situation with COVID-19 across our country, we have to learn how to mitigate certain things and making sure they understand to mitigate the effects of what COVID-19 can do and will do. Sharing the importance, of course, what the president says, for guidelines for America, and what our various respective local governments are saying as well, with our governor here in Florida, and also, of course, as leadership here in our city and our county. I just want to make sure you're all aware of that. Just want to make sure you all knew that. And I thought it was a very good conference call that was held this past Friday to kind of support, and get away from some of the negative, I think, that was being said as much about the COVID-19 and especially among people of color. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. Any other comments from commissioners? Commissioner Madden. You're on. Yeah, no, go back. Yeah, there you go.
Am I on?
Yes.
So one thing I wanted to say that I was really excited about is that today, Lakeland Regional Health was going to be opening their first respiratory care center. And I am just so excited about the innovation of that on their Pablo campus, to be able to take anyone who is having symptoms they suspect might be COVID or any kind of respiratory distress, for them to call the LRH's Pablo campus. I think I have the phone number here somewhere. Let's see.
Right next to Crowder Brothers.
863. Yes, 863-284-5000. And if you get a doctor's report or you've had a telehealth visit and they say that they think you're a candidate for COVID test, to give that Pablo campus a call. And it's something that we've been hearing about, being able to isolate all of the COVID patients helps, really mitigate risk of spreading it throughout the hospital and in other healthcare facilities. So I thought that was an excellent innovation. I just wanted to bring that up today and say, great job, Lakeland Regional Health, for coming up with that idea. And I also wanted to ask Kelly Coos if maybe, I don't know if you keep the callers on these, on our meetings, but I have been worried about the gentleman who mentioned he had mental illness and was the golfer. And I don't know if you have his name or if there's a way I could contact him.
I can look through the minutes. I probably have his name. My best guess at spelling it correctly, but I'll see what I can find for you.
Okay. And I would just make an appeal to my colleagues.
I thought he was a golfer at Cleveland Heights.
At the Heights. No, that's right. He played at the Heights and wanted to keep the Heights open.
I'll find his name for you.
And he just said he suffered from depression. So, and I would just make an appeal to my colleagues that I know you're defending your action to be able to shut down all of our parks and recreation, but I don't think it's helpful to minimize what people are going through to try to replace 3 miles of running or jogging. I mean, it's not just, every single street that surrounds Lake Morton or Lake Hollingsworth has to walk on the street to get to the next street to go more than a couple blocks. So I had a lot of people call me that were offended by Kevin's video, saying, are you going to arrest me for being in the bike lane? I can't even get to the next street and get more than a couple blocks in my neighborhood if this sidewalk's closed. So I was looking up the state, what the state rules say about jogging. And it does say if you go against traffic on the shoulder of the road, you can go on the road. Certainly you have to give the bike riders a heads up, but there are a lot of people on all these streets that are used to getting in a 3-mile run or a 3-mile walk or a 3-mile with their child in a stroller that can no longer get a 3-mile. I've heard people using alleyways, trying to find new routes. And it is not as simple as some of you are suggesting, who might not be avid runners and joggers, which is an essential activity that the state allows. So I know we shut it all down. I know I was the losing vote, and I'm happy to lose, standing up for these people. But I think that we need to use kindness in our way of how we're talking, and to see that it is, otherwise they're going to get really frustrated. Right now they're acquiescing to the rules, but when they're socially shamed and say that they want people to die because they're trying to find a running route and they're on the street, it is not helping the situation. So you've taken away their right to be able to run and jog in our city parks. I just don't think we should have videos showing like we don't want to have stronger efforts of, mitigation if we see you on the road, or have people afraid if they see a police officer while they're jogging on a street that's not their regular street, because it might be 3 streets over, but it's their neighborhood. It's within 3 miles of their house, but they no longer have a circle 3 miles to be able to run on. And it's a lot of people who this has been a huge disruption. And it's not just about an older lady who wants to do an exercise video in her house, or, it is people who run miles, athletes. All of this has been closed down, and exercise is a huge part of their life. It's not just something that they just walk around their street with their dog. This is it's hard to replicate those miles that they need to get in for their sanity, for their survival, and also just because it's an essential activity for them. And you're now not. I mean, I know the mayor's saying this is not just this month. This is going to be well through May. So I think if it's the truth and that's what you plan to do, you need to really be more encouraging than just saying there's plenty of sidewalks you can use and shaming them if they don't have a mask on, or getting upset that they're in the bike lane trying to get to the next street. And so I am just sharing their frustration because they call me because they know I'm the one dissenting vote, and it's a big percent of our population who really was upset that was taken away. And it's fine, we lost. Yeah, that vote lost. But I think people can take it a little better, if there's just some sense of that's a big loss for a lot of people, and just handle it maybe a little bit more compassionately and graciously. Thank you.
Commissioner Madden, we don't disagree with you, and the video came down as a result, and the tone was an overreach, and it was appropriate to bring it down. And so that encouragement is very positively received. We need to think about the needs of everyone and state it in a way that doesn't make you feel guilted, and the tone will be preserved. I'm a writer, so I also know that those get it disrupts everybody, and I'm spending more time on the street than I ever did. Commissioner McLeod.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Commissioner Madden, for keeping this in front of us and bringing those concerns to us. Yes. Because I know we've all heard from a number of people who share that viewpoint, and what I have tried to share with people is I believe the heart of our commission is we don't want to keep things closed any longer than we have to. I knew that it, especially as it related to the trails and parks, that it was a vote that would inconvenience a lot of people in their daily lives, and did not take that lightly. As I've been running around my neighborhood, and I've seen more people running streets in and around my neighborhood than I have before. Not crowds of people, but just people who are altering their routes. And one thing I have found encouraging over the past week, I want to give a shout out to the Lakeland Runners Club, because I saw they have really been encouraging their members to, while closures are not fun, one, to respect them, to abide by them, and to encourage people to find other routes. And I saw a lot of sharing of, hey, I ran down this street. I'd never been down this street before. And so I saw a lot of Lakelanders trying to make the best of it, and knowing that these weren't easy decisions, but at the same time, they recognize that this has inconvenienced a lot of people. So I do think that's something, as we haven't committed to anything for the long term or past April, that we're taking this 1 week at a time as we go and see what happens each week.
Excellent and well communicated. And I love under promising and over delivering. And that's what I hope we're able to do. Commissioner Walker.
Not on that subject, but I need to make a correction if I could, Mr. Mayor. I had mentioned when I was sharing with you about the Washington Park Rochelle alumni making masks, and you can get one from. When I was given the information, and I mentioned they had given over 100 to, about to give over 100 to Mayo Clinic in Jacksonville. That was not correct. I want to correct that. It's the Moffitt Cancer Center in Tampa versus Mayo. I don't want to give out any incorrect information if I can help it, because I know it'll get back in my face. So I want to make sure I corrected that. Thank you so very much.
Thank you for that conscientiousness. Any other commissioners? Seeing none, yes, City Manager Delgado.
Yes, would like to leave on a good note if there's not any other questions. Just received some information that's very, very positive. As you know, and in our other world where we're actually doing day-to-day city business, we've been working very closely with our water utility attorney on trying to extend our SwiftMud permit. I sent you some information about a month ago letting you know that was one of the key areas that we were looking at trying to get that extension. I just received some information, and I guess I'll be calling Mr. Segundo Fernandez immediately after this meeting, and received some information that SwiftMud has preliminarily provided us what we believe is an extension through December of 2038 on our current water use permit, which is 35 million gallons a day. Obviously, staff is going to have to review that with our city attorneys. I'll talk to Segundo, but this is very, very good news. It really is tied to our commitment to continue to supply TECO that 4 million gallons a day that we do currently today out of our wetland. And so from a standpoint of keeping water running and having the capacity to do that, not just for residential, but for development, this really puts us in good stead through 2038. But I'll get more of the details, but I'd like to end on a real good note as we move forward.
That's an excellent piece of news. And, the reflex for Swift Mud is to pull down closer to what your use rate is and not to leave a large extension out there. We're 25 million gallons a day currently. And so to have that be stayed at 35 through 2038 is excellent. And I also think that is the whole regional water cooperative piece too that weighs into that as we go along. So it's wonderful news. Any other commissioners with anything to share? Commissioner Franklin.
Mayor, if I could just real briefly, and not to keep dragging out a subject that's been a real sensitive one for all of us, but I did want to kind of go on the record with my colleagues on why I made a reversal of my decision on why we were doing what we were doing with the trails. I thought Commissioner Walker's points and some others about closing some of the parks while leaving some open wasn't fair to all the citizens. So I think once we start going down that road, I think we need to be consistent. But for me, the evening before I had emailed Tony the following morning and said, hey, I think we need to get back together sooner than Friday and look at this again. I actually was down at Lake Hollingsworth and drove the lake and started counting how many times, if I were walking that lake, and normally I'd walk it in 45 minutes or I'd run it in 20, 25. But if I were walking that lake in 45 minutes, I stopped counting at 100 times that if I were walking that lake, I would be passing within 3 feet of total strangers. And with all the efforts we're doing to socially distance, and I think about what would I do in the course of a day right now under quarantine where I would go put myself more than 100 times in close proximity to total strangers in a 45-minute period. And I just felt it's totally wrong. So I stand by it. I'm totally for personal freedom, but that was wrong. And I'm happy with the vote that I took. And that's all. That's the end of my editorial.
And that's not to distance you, Commissioner Madden, in any way. I don't think in that comment. We're glad. I mean, you raised 5 boys and a hardy girl. And so you have that whole sense of the robustness of need that exists physically. And so we hear that, but it does focus down to this point of being as drastic as necessary while we're in the need for social isolation. And no, we wouldn't. I was in a grocery store and felt uncomfortable, a little bit thinking, why am I in here? I'm going to Instacart. And it was part of me wanted to just get out, and you go, it isn't necessary. And, it's at Publix and they were doing a great job with the arrows. It's just not necessary. And so I get it. And why do we put ourselves in that scenario? And listen, I'm a hugger. I miss people a lot. I don't know what we're going to do after this coming out. We're going to have to do something like this. Any other comments? If there are none, then I'd accept a motion to adjourn. So moved by Commissioner Walker and seconded by Commissioner McLeod. And opposed, same. We are adjourned. Thank you very much for your time. See you next Monday, if not sooner.